All right. We are live. We're live on the Merge Marketing Podcast. You're listening to the Merge Marketing Podcast. I'm Jason Hunt. I'm here today with Martin, aka Marty Adey. Nice of you to join us on the show, Marty.
Thanks, man. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Today, we're going to be talking about sales automation, how to automate while staying human. Marty is the founder of Leadosaurus, a B2B lead gen startup that tastefully combines automation and human touch. And Marty's based over on the other side of the country, over in Vancouver. How's life over in Vancouver today, Marty?
It's beautiful, man. We've been in a wild, hot spell. I think you guys are starting to get it, but we had like some 39, 40 degree days on the coast, which is pretty
crazy.
Unheard of. Yeah, it's unheard of over here. And nobody has AC. So thankfully, we're not sweating as bad now. It's starting to cool off, but it's been a wicked summer so far.
Yeah, no, definitely. And a lot more people spending time indoors, surfing online, doing digital marketing, all that type of stuff. And we're going to dive a little bit into that today. But really, I want to start, Marty, like on your journey, because full transparency to our audience, Marty had still has a company called LED Solutions.
LED Upgrades.
LED Upgrades. And LED Upgrades was a client of Merge Media. We developed his website. And
LED Solutions must have been one competitor of mine that you helped.
Yeah. Touche.
Yeah. Thought I had exclusivity, Jay.
Yeah, I know. I have it actually written right in front of me too. I don't know why I didn't look at it. But so LED Upgrades, we developed them a website. And then Marty said, you know what, during the pandemic, not too many people are looking to get lighting in their warehouses or facilities. So you did a huge pivot. Give us a little bit of a backstory on that journey for you.
Yeah. It almost came out of necessity because I was starting to get pretty antsy with the lighting industry just prior to COVID. And the great irony is I actually had a plan to go into the live events space because I used to work in that space, concert promotion, putting on shows. And that was my plan. And this was like February, just prior to the pandemic. And thankfully, my timing worked out that I didn't leave 1 or 2 weeks earlier because it turned out, there wouldn't be a live event for a year and a half.
That would have been a big U-turn.
Yeah, exactly. So then I was thrust back into the lighting thing. And as you said, selling like high ticket capital projects into a pandemic when, a lot of these decision makers had just, lobbed the heads of a third of their staff. And then we walk in there, ask them to spend $100,000 on their lights. It wasn't very well received. So one thing that we were doing really well, though, still was prospecting. We had set up some systems to work with sales agents overseas in the Philippines, and we had built a bunch of tools and integrated them, using Airtable, Zapier, Pipedream, a bunch of tech that we can dig into later if people want some tactical stuff. And that was really working. So we were like cranking out qualified appointments, which would be great for later on. And we had a full top of the funnel, but it pretty well come to a halt. And then I had a friend from my EO forum. I don't know if you guys know Entrepreneurs Organization, but I'm a member of EO Vancouver chapter. And a friend from my forum asked if we would kind of roll out this system for him because he thought it looked really interesting. And it worked. He said he would pay a lot of money for this. He didn't, but he said in theory he would, and had another friend kind of request a similar situation. And before we knew it, we had kind of broken off a prospecting company, a B2B lead gen company, kind of using what we had learned about sales automation in our own business over the last 5 years. And the rest is history.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting because you essentially, you were the guinea pig, or you proofed the concept on your own business before rolling it out to market, which I think is very important. It wasn't just, sitting at a bar with a buddy being like, hey, I got this idea, let's do it. And let's start testing with other people's money. It's like you proof the concept with your own business before putting it live and going live with it. So maybe we can dive a little bit into that particular system that you use to generate leads for LED? Because when I originally talked to you back in, it would have been 2019, you were talking about all these flyer drops and doing this and that and the other. So tell a little bit about that story on how you found this method to generate leads for your own business.
Yes, direct mail was effective, and actually, oddly enough, I think it still is. I think it's coming back in a big way, as I don't know, just as we're all inundated with digital stuff. Might be a little harder to do because people seem to be not at the office very much. I don't know if you guys are finding this, but a lot of our agents who are doing cold calls right now, our connection rate is really low, which is really interesting.
When you say connection rate, what do you mean? What do you mean connection rate? Like actually accessing that person on the other end of the line?
Yeah, having conversations. Yeah. Like our conversation rate is really low. And that's I think that's really interesting, not only because it's a critical part of our business, but I wonder if this is going to be a lasting change from the pandemic, which is going to make digital channels like the ones you and I are, lean on a little more now, all the more relevant and critical. But to answer your question, how we eventually, how we sort of built this system was largely around Airtable. This is my third project, and 2 of those 3 companies, we built the back-end ERP on Airtable, which is just an incredible piece of software. If your audience wants to give it a shot, you can get pro plans, and there's a community called Join Secret as well, where I think they'll give you like a $1,200 or $1,500 credit to try Airtable, which is tons of money, and it's just so powerful. Like that's one thing I think for anybody in the digital space, if you want to kind of stitch everything together and automate your processes, whether it's outbound, inbound, whatever you're doing, project management, I think Airtable is a great way to do it. So we used Airtable as kind of like a command center. And am I being too tactical here, or do you think this is what you're folks are going to be after?
This is cool. No, this is perfect. I mean, our audience awesome. are business owners, entrepreneurs that are looking for this type of insight for sure.
Yeah, if you're looking for leverage, great. So we built this kind of ERP centered around Airtable, and of course, there's a million apps for outbound. Like if you SalesLoft, HubSpot. Any CRM, if you're just going to integrate a soft phone with it. But we actually just built one ourselves with Airtable and our own little tracking system that was really lean and really light. And I'm not suggesting that everyone do that because it comes with its shortcomings too. You get flexibility, but you lose some off-the-shelf features like anything else. But I think what it really showed was just that like we could automate any part of this process that we wanted if we just thought about it. Right? Like we weren't limited to Salesforce, SalesLoft, HubSpot. Like those tools are all great. Some of them are very expensive, but at the end of the day, if you take the time to think about what you want to automate, like there are ways now, like every good software has a pretty robust API that's open, likely. And if you think about it, maybe do a little bit of research yourself or find a buddy who knows how to write, pretty basic JavaScript. You can automate just about anything in your sales process that you want. And I think that realization was sort of what set it all off, because then we just started showing this thing to people who'd been in the lead gen or digital marketing industry for, 10, 20 years. And they were like, holy shit, you built that? And it never really occurred to me or our team, which was small, that we had sort of done anything out of the norm. Right. But I think this trend towards starting to think about what you want automated, I think it's very analogous to what's going on in data right now in general. It's like there is no lack of data, right? It's like you can get as much data as you want about anything, but the only thing that's important now is going to be how we use it. And I think automation is sort of going down the same way, because automating everything is not going to help you. Golden rule number 1, never automate a process you haven't done manually, So if we tried to automate everything, we just end up breaking everything. And that never works. But now you can think about the components that you really want to automate that are going to have, high leverage for you, and automate them pretty easily.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that for a sec. What are those very first kind of high level sort of automations that a lot of businesses may not utilize right now?
Okay, the first ones, like if people are using like Infusionsoft or Keep, as it is now, or like Active Campaign, those sort of like outbound, but more for marketing as opposed to outreach. If I'd say like marketing being people who are already in your system, outreach being cold. If I segment it that way, I'd say the lowest hanging fruit in the sales automation world is like a nurturing campaign, right? Everyone, if you're doing any outbound, like you're probably getting 3 maybe laters for every one, yes, I'll take an appointment. And those 3 maybe laters generally just go into purgatory or nowhere. We forget about them. Instead, throw them into a nurturing campaign, and the snowballing effect of that, like that was when we realized it with LED, because we were like 6 or 8 months in, and all of a sudden we had 400 facilities that were interesting to us. These were plants probably 50 to 500,000 square feet, lucrative jobs, but it's a really long sales cycle. And the buying window is very, is very small, right? Like, in maybe in marketing, a buying window, we might have 3 to 5% of people at any given time who are willing to buy, maybe even higher. But I think in that capital projects world, it's even smaller, right? It's maybe like 1 to 2, which maybe doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually double or triple, in terms of the number of buyers. So having a nurturing campaign where when the time does come up, we're top of mind, right? And it's not aggressive. It's every month, depending on the length of your sales cycle, but having a nurturing campaign that's at least 1.5 to 2 sales cycles long. So you're covering the whole sort of course of business. And then, after that, a forever follow-up campaign where you just email them once quarterly or something. But I think that's low-hanging fruit.
I think that's one of the areas that a lot of business owners are neglecting right now, is that low-hanging fruit. It's funny that you call it low-hanging fruit, because for a lot of people, it's not low-hanging fruit. It's like, wow, all this automation. What do you mean nurture system? What do you mean nurture campaign? And it's like, I talked to a guy this morning who, small business owner, he does home inspections and things like that. And he's just relies very heavily referrals, but not really a proper nurture system is set up yet, where there's a sequence of emails that goes out when a lead comes in. It's like a lead comes in, you have to call them, you have to talk to them and have a conversation, but then it ends at that. Maybe a follow-up call a few days later, but that's the extent of it. And that is where something like what you're talking about here today, Marty, is so important, and going to save a lot of small business owners a lot of time, and really creates a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, anywhere you can close the loop. Like, I think automation is such an easy way to do that, right? Because we have staff turnover, like if we only have staff for an average of every, say, 2 years now or something, that's a whole bunch of leads are going to fall off if you lose a member of your sales team. And we're going to change systems frequently, but that seems to be like one thing that if you implement, and it's such an easy way to just close the loop. It's like, oh yeah, like they just get an email every quarter now. They will never be forgotten, and it's on autopilot. Like, you don't have to touch it. It's not complicated, and it isn't that complicated, right? Any tool can do it, and if you look it up, anyone can find them.
What are some big mistakes that businesses are making around automation? Are there certain mistakes that you're seeing out there that can be rectified?
Yeah, I'll tell you the ones I make, and repeatedly. I think like the rule number 1: never automate a process you haven't done manually. We do this all the time because we see this. That's so easy. It's so easy to automate. Good example could be, like, let's say we need to get information from a database. Let's say it's outbound data from a database to a customer. Like, here's a recent example from this week. So we've got one customer where it isn't exactly our typical process where we manage everything and we just put the meeting straight in their calendar. This one is more, he has a salesperson. So as soon as a lead shows interest, we do the handoff and they actually book the meeting themselves, but we get them to the point where they say, yeah, I want a meeting, and then we hand them off. So in this case, like, that's a really easy thing to automate. Okay, great. We mark a lead as interested. And then even with Zapier, something, or in Integromat, any sort of like simple automation tool like that. We just, we send them an email, it grabs the fields, it says, this guy's interested, give him a call or send him an email. But if we, like, I was really tempted to do that off the hop, of course, because like, well, why would I have to manage, why me or anybody on the team manage more email than we have to? But like naturally, if we don't just test that little, because it's not our core process, we haven't actually done that exact process yet manually. And sure enough, in doing that process, like it occurred to me that there was something there that that I would have broke if I just tried to automate it out of the gate, like a really simple, stupid thing, like, oh yeah, like he needs this piece of information or whatever. And it just, the whole thing would have fallen flat. So instead, just going through it once, twice, do it for a week and then automate it. Cause you're going to find the ways to simplify it.
That's awesome. How often do you find, do you tweak those automations and let them like set and forget, or do you have to constantly be tweaking them?
Whatever you do, keep a log of it. Like I learned this from a buddy of mine who's a developer, Colin. This idea of like only do things once. So like he actually writes docs for pretty well everything, even if it's just like a very simple doc. Because like my Zapier account, let's say, will just become like this incredibly scattered, shit show. It's
annoying
whereas
too.
He'll have a docs, like I'll forget what's being automated ultimately, and then down the line, slight tweak to a process, automation breaks, can't even find it. So whatever you do, keep a doc, and then you'll at least know what you have to tweak.
I think that doc is so important because Zapier is constantly glitching out. It does glitch out and you lose zaps here and there. Then you have to manually go into Facebook to download the leads. It does get a little cumbersome in some cases with Zapier. So just relying so heavily or 100% all in on Zapier, you might be causing yourself problems later on if you don't have a backup plan.
Yeah, and if for anyone who wants a backup plan, because I imagine most of your audience at least has heard of Zapier, right? Or they're probably using it. But there's a great piece of software that's free called Pipedream. A little more code intensive. Like anyone could actually figure it out. Like, I'm not a coder by any means. Like I can figure it out. It takes a little longer for me than for someone who knows what they're doing. But Pipedream is an incredibly robust software to make API, endpoints and calls talk to each other, just like Zapier does, but you can build them yourself. Much more reliable.
Awesome. So I want to switch lanes just for a second here. And because one of the topics of conversation that we had in the past was outbound. Our business relies very heavily on inbound, doing a lot of marketing, Facebook lead gen, SEO. But in your case, you speak very highly of doing outbound sales. And I want to hear kind of some input from you on supporting that. And do you still support outbound sales?
I think so. Yeah, but only because it's all I know, I guess. Like I'd been in sales forever, so this was just the natural avenue. I had tried enough, Facebook ads or more than anything, Google ads. Had more success with like even retargeting, like display ads than with search. But like I spent so much money on search for no ROI without the upgrades that I just sort of wrote it off. And it's not like I was good at it. But I think that I realized in the B2B space, unless your consumer really knows what to search for, like lighting, and maybe LED upgrades was just a perfect example, but like there are so many consumers who are searching for lighting of some sort that it just drowns out, right? So like we were just getting all the wrong traffic and we were paying really handsomely for it and nothing was converting. And in this scenario, the B2B customer wasn't looking for anything different from the B2C customer. So, or at least I couldn't find that. And it didn't make any sense for me to try to figure that out. Cause I wasn't seeing the ROI. So having a background in sales, I think naturally I went to outbound where it's what I know. And it just feels like we're in control. Like we know exactly who we're contacting. We can control when and how often we contact those people. We can take an account-based approach across multiple channels, automate it. And then we're not like, sure, there's still a cold lead, but in the same way, if we're dropping enough sort of lines in the water and and they're biting, and it isn't like a snake oil pitch where we're not actually offering something that we don't offer, right? We're not advertising something we actually don't want to sell. Like we're happy with a lower conversion rate because then those people are interested. To me, that's almost the same scenario as, a PPC or a display ad where someone is coming in warm, because we actually happen to just strike them right when they are in the window. We email them and says, hey, noticed you had a keynote talk at this conference, and I'm talking about on behalf of a client, right? You had a keynote talk at this conference. Would love to see if we can help you improve your keynote speaking skills. He's a coach. And if you do that enough times, like, these people are actually interested. It's like they don't have to search for it. We put it in front of them. So I bet a part of it is an element of control. Certainly I'm seeing that the phone, which I actually feel like the last 5 years has been really underappreciated, much more effective than people give it credit for cold calling. But it's uncomfortable. So people don't want to do it. Right.
I think, cold calling, I mean, this is something that I was like tripling down on in 2017, 18, and spending a lot of time, like basically
Big
setting.
time.
Yeah. Like I would say I would be calling a minimum 100 people a day. I would not leave my desk until I called that 100th person.
Man, you're
in
such
a day.
monster. You're such a monster.
But you look back at it and it's like, hold on a second. Wow. Out of all that work I've done this week, calling 100 people a day, the activity that was actually happening in terms of people being interested in what I had to offer was very low. And it was very hard to justify the amount of time I was spending on outbound cold calling. And so I kind of put that to rest in 2018 and focused more on inbound. And they're pretty sure that's probably a trend that happened with a lot of businesses because nobody was getting much traction, it seems like, with cold calling because there were so many cold callers. But now when you have all these people dropping off, maybe that does open up an opportunity for a business like yours where maybe there's not as much demand for cold calling as there once was.
Well, I think that just like the reality of it is that like cold calling for a day is a terrible use of your time, without question. Mm-hmm. But if you find someone, say in the Philippines, who went to university in the States or Canada, so they're as Canadian as anybody else as far as the person on the other side of the phone is concerned, and you can a great wage for these people is say 10 or 12 Canadian dollars an hour after bonus. Like that is a much better use. That is a great trade-off, right? If you can book a meeting a day, and like we were having a heyday through 2019 and the start of 2020 prior to COVID with cold calling. But now I do think it actually is dropping off a bit because no one's in the office. So we're going to find out if people are comfortable getting phone calls on their cell phone, or if because those mobile numbers are becoming more available now, right?
We're going to find out. Duck cleaners are crushing life right now, I bet.
Are they? Yeah.
Well, you got to think, right? People are at home. They're at home. They're on their cells, right? People aren't at the office.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think that like perhaps that is changing where you do need more of an omnichannel approach. But the other outside of offshoring is, I think, another great way to use automation is Orem, ORUM, is one example of a tool that does this, but one of many where you can ring multiple lines and have a voicemail drop that you can either use a voicemail drop or not, but you can ring multiple lines, and the technology has come a bit of a distance, right? It's not like when you get a call from BMO Bank or TD Bank or what have you, and there's like, a 3-second silence where you have to hang up because it's going to be BMO selling you credit card insurance. The technology's gotten a lot better now where you don't have to wait nearly as long, and you can ring anywhere from 1 to 2 to 10 lines at a time. So if the connection rate is really low, and you want to bang out 300 calls a day, but you're only going to end up connecting to say 20%, you can use a tool like Orem or any other sort of power dialer, but get a good one that can have an automated voicemail drop if you want to use it, and a really fast connection rate. And then use that automation to like drastically, you could probably do as many calls as you were doing in a day in 45 minutes. Because now you're just talk time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. Marty, this has been awesome. I love talking about this topic. It's got a lot of value, and they might have some questions for you. What's the best way for them to get in touch?
Best way to get in touch with me. I kind of hide on social media a bit, but I'm gonna have to change that because guys like you keep telling me I need to. Now that I'm in the marketing world, it seems like it's non-negotiable. The best way to find me would be martin.adey, Adey, at leadosaurus.com. Martin.adey.
Not Adey.
What was the first one? Yeah, what was one you said before too?
Martin Adey.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
It rolls off the tongue. No.
Yeah.
Martin Adey. There you go.
Yeah, Martin.adey at leadosaurus.com. And I do have an ask, actually, if I may.
Yeah, go for it.
I would love to find an operator, like a strong, someone with a strong operations skill set to partner into this business. It could be an equity position over time. They could be profit share. There could be equity at the gate. It could be earned over time. But I can see how this thing is going to scale a lot faster if I can bring someone who has some operations chops into the mix. So if there's anybody listening, reach out, please. There could be a cool opportunity here.
In the Vancouver area?
Doesn't have to be. Vancouver might be great, but at the end of the day, I think we're going to have to embrace remote. So Vancouver might be my preference, but if the right person happened to be in Toronto, I wouldn't object.
Cool. Awesome. There you go. Marty Adey. And Marty, if you don't mind, can I ask you some rapid fire questions?
Fire away.
All right, let's go. All right. Favorite sports team?
Jets, Winnipeg Jets.
Best salesperson alive?
Jordan Belfort.
Favorite CRM platform?
Pipedrive.
Are you a morning or night person?
Both.
Next travel destination outside of Canada?
Puerto Vallarta.
Last question. If you could choose anyone to represent your brand, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh my God, that's such a great question. Muhammad Ali. I'm stoked that came so quickly to me. Muhammad Ali, he is he's just got this incredible sort of curiosity, energy. It borders on arrogance, but it's not arrogance, right? He's confident in all the right ways, and he's got this degree of lightness about him that I think like our brand actually tries to emulate.
That's awesome. Great answer, Marty. Thanks again for joining us, and we will be talking to you again real soon.
Thanks, Jay. Take care.
Awesome. There you go. Marty Adey on the Merged Marketing Podcast. And one of the big takeaways today, I think, is the power of automation. A lot of small business owners out there are in the weeds of the everyday activities and tasks, and they're working a lot in the business and not on the business. And by setting up automations correctly, it can help you work on the business and not as much in the business when things can get done for you. And you'll be saving a lot of costs and time in the long run if you do set up some of these automations that Marty was talking about today. So you might want to give this episode a play back. But again, thank you so much, guys, for listening and tuning in. Don't forget to go on over and subscribe on your go-to podcast platform, the Merged Marketing Podcast, and give us a review. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks a lot, everybody. Don't settle for good. Be great. We'll see you.